welcome to White Noise Night Coffee Sessions. This is our 5th installment of the podcast, and I'm here with 2 poets today. Was going to be 3, but one couldn't make it, which is totally fine. These 2 lovely people are going to be our features for our next event, which is going to be Monday, June 23rd, here at Greenkill, obviously, for our queer poetry showcase, which I'm so excited about. This is the 2nd year that we've done the showcase at White Noise, and I just think it's great that I'm always finding like new local queer poets who are so down to like perform and, you know, do the thing. Like, it's just awesome. And now this is the first time I'm interviewing some people who are going to be a part of the showcase, so that's also great. And I have with me today Linden and Becky Sue. Not in that order, maybe in that order. We'll see. So my first question for you guys, and I'm going to start with Becky Sue. Who is Becky Sue?
Me and Linden talked about this question and we were cracking up about it. It's funny. I've watched other podcasts of you asking people this question. Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting question where it seems like really obvious, and it also throws people off so much. Yeah, I guess hi, I'm Becky. Full name Becky Sue. It's really classic with my life. I was raised on a farm, so it really ties that in. I would describe myself as a poet, mother, lesbian, a humanitarian, and someone that loves like food and community.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Nice to meet you too.
And Linden. Who is Linden? It's a weird way to ask that.
Who is Linden? Right. Like, who even knows? Mm-hmm. It is such a disarming question to ask. And I've been thinking about it because I also looked at your previous podcasts and saw you ask people, and it really has ignited just like I thought about this Emily Dickinson quote, I'm out with lanterns looking for myself. Like, I'm always figuring out, we're always figuring out who we are in these little moments. And I also think, there are some things that I can say for sure. Like, I'm a dog dad, and I am a writer, as in person who writes to figure things out, person who writes to understand things. I love to walk. I love pizza. And I'm queer. And I live here in the Hudson Valley, and I feel like a mushroom most days.
Wow. Can you tell us more about that?
About feeling like a mushroom?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I often look to the natural world, especially like mushrooms and mycelial networks, to think about what happens in life. And like, it's such a beautiful mirror. So much queerness happens in the natural world. And what a beautiful metaphor for composting and for grief. I think about if I'm thinking about the trajectory of my life and what shapes my poetry, I think about grief a lot. And when I think about grief, I think about what can it become? And quite literally, mushrooms and fungus and mycelial networks are decomposing. They also are magical. They speak to each other. So there's like, I learned recently, I don't know the name of them, but there are mycelial networks that are connected into tree roots, and those mycelial networks speak to each other and let each other know if a tree is sick or if a tree is deficient in something. And one tree can pass its nutrients on to another tree through these mycelial networks. And here we are nerding out about fungus.
Oh, I'm a huge mushroom lover. I don't know, like, is there a term for that? Like a
fun guy.
A fun guy.
A fun guy.
It's interesting you brought that up. This is like, we're totally going off track now, but who cares? I also recently learned about something related to that with mushrooms, but I was just listening to this podcast, ironically enough, about mushrooms, and this guy was saying, like, he was like a big mushroom nerd, and he was like, his teacher taught him that mushrooms aren't the host, the world is. And I was just like, yeah, like, I do really believe that they're a big part of everything. Like, so much more than we even understand. There's millions of species out there that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
And we could really go on about that, but we're not here to talk about mushrooms. Although maybe one day we will be. Okay, let's move on. We're gonna talk poetic infancies, and artistic infancies in general. So, Linden, can you mention a first memory that you have of writing a poem or doing something that felt notable to you artistically?
Oh, thank you for this question. I recently had the task of cleaning out my childhood home. My dad passed away in 2011 and my mom passed away at the end of 2023, and I'm the older sibling who sort of took on the task of cleaning things out, and was confronted with so many memories of, you grow and you change and you evolve, but you're also always who you have always been. And there were these moments that, I looked at a picture, I looked at a drawing, and I was like, shit, like that is like who I still am, And one of them was like a book that I had made in kindergarten. I don't remember making this, but the artifact exists. And it was like a book of future projections. Like, what do you think you're going to look like when you are older? And what do you think your job is going to be? And what is your house going to look like? And are you going to have a family? These things. And I said, I want to be an artist. And I just never remember thinking that as a kid. And it's still strange to call myself that because, we live in capitalism, and it's just such a funny thing to choose art whenever we can. But yeah, that was like, I guess, a recent memory, but also like reaching back into a very young Linden.
That's awesome. What a great memory. And Becky Sue, do you have a first memory you want to recall for us?
It's wild. I didn't really have a first memory. I was trying to figure it out. Writing always felt like being raised on a farm. It was like we just had shit to do always. And I really loved lounging around. I just really loved any moment I could get to, like, look at nature, find bugs. I just like wanted to take everything in. And I do remember though, when you were telling this story of writing my mom a poem for Mother's Day. And writing, I had like just learned cursive, so I was like, this shit's gonna be gorgeous. And I just like wrote it like so fancy, and it was titled Love, and I did the capital L, which felt like the coolest of the capital cursive letters. And I remember thinking like, these words are gonna they're gonna hit. And they did, and she loved it, and she was like, oh, this is so beautiful. But I was like, okay, I'm sorry, you were supposed to like cry. This is supposed to be monumental. And I realized how like hungry I was for words. I really liked how people phrased sentences. I really liked just how people came up with different thoughts, and I would just like, I would listen to music more for the metaphor than anything else. I loved how people would do certain wordplay, and I would talk to everybody about it. I was like, did you hear that? They talked about cicadas singing like a symphony. Did you hear that? And they're like, yeah, we heard the song. And I'm like, okay, does anyone get that though? Like it was so, I just kept looking around for people to be impacted by words like I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know at the time that was me as a poet. But yeah, we are who we have always been. We're just like, as adults, trying to get back to that and find a way to like allow that authenticity to have a space to grow.
Yeah.
So now I can look back and be like, oh, baby Becky loved words. And now I can just surround myself with them. And I can lay in bed and just read poetry. I can just do that. And I'm not doing a bad job, and my laundry will still be there, and like everything's okay to take a pause and just read some poems.
I think we all can relate to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's the best.
Super quick, you just reminded me of a memory I haven't thought of in so long too, and I feel like I have to bring it up because, this is in relation to the queer poetry showcase, and I had a similar experience with music like that growing up, where I was always talking to people about songs that I loved, and one of the biggest ones for me that I just played on repeat for, I couldn't even tell you how long. I would sing it to my friends constantly, was You and I by Lady Gaga, and I just was like, this is the best song ever. And she's so powerful, and I was obsessed with Lady Gaga growing up. She just was like my idol, but just made me think of that. And I'm like thinking of myself as like a, I don't know, 9-year-old, like singing that to all my friends. I'm like, listen to these lyrics. Like, she was woke before everyone else. But yeah. So moving on. Thank you guys for your answers. Becky, were there any writers that consistently inspired you in your work growing up?
Actually, I didn't have a lot of access to a lot of writing growing up. My mom would try to she got me some poetry books because she's like, I think you're into this, but I had no way of comprehending Old English. I was like, the fuck? I'm 8. I don't understand what any of this means. Yeah. And I would 1 or 2 lines, but I couldn't get the weight of it. So we didn't have a lot of books around. It wasn't a thing that I really had access to. And I remember when I first went to college, a lot of peers would give me shit for that. Be like, you haven't read so-and-so. And I was snarky, and I was like, yeah, can you believe we ended up at the same place? And I didn't even read those things, so let me live. But then once I had access to things, I could take things in without the kind of a projection of what I should like. I could come at it from a more authentic space because it was all I could just take everything, take your choice. And poetry I still find new people all the time that like shock me with their words. Novels, I found Isabel Allende was someone that like combined so many things of combining like political climate and magical realism and just like the beauty. Her words, even though they're translated, were still like thick with poetry, and I was so impressed with that. But growing up, yeah, I didn't necessarily have that access, and I wanted that, but I didn't know how to find it. Poetry felt like a lofty thing that people in like Europe did, not it wasn't achievable, or like accessible to like to me. But yeah, poetry was like within the farm that I was living on, not necessarily on my bookshelves.
So you found it more in these external
Yeah,
situations
it just
and
kind
settings.
yeah, it was something that I just was drawn to because I liked words and I liked things, and I love a metaphor. I'm pretty ridiculous. That's how I understand things.
Yeah.
So if something made sense tangibly, then I would be like, oh, let's tie that into this emotional thing. And I would just always be trying to make sense of things through these tangible things in my life. But I didn't really know that that was poetry until later on. So yeah, I didn't even really categorize myself as a poet till it was like recently. My kids have helped me categorize myself as a poet because they tell people that their mom is a poet.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit,
That's awesome.
that's better than being published.
Yeah.
Then my kids brought my poems to their school to read to their class.
Wow.
And I was like, what? So, yeah.
You've won.
Yeah,
life.
I'm like mom famous. That's a big deal.
I love that
Yeah.
for you.
It's huge.
And Linden, any writers you want to shout out?
Yeah, similar to Becky, like I did not come to poetry until later in life, in terms of, having a voracious hunger for it and a relationship with it. I studied it in school the way it was required. But growing up, I was actually much more interested in like biology and math. Weird. And then once I graduated college, I think I was a journalism and psychology double major. And so much of my reading and writing was like, not even creative nonfiction, just like news. And so it took me a long time to come around to enjoying writing and reading from a creative standpoint, because for so long it was like utility, and still is, professionally for me. But I now read and write to explore the relationship that I have with the unknown, and to explore, I don't know, like what all of us look to in writers that we admire, just trying to find ourselves. And two writers who have shaped my creative practice, I would say the most out of any other, they're teachers of mine, are Shira Ehrlichman and Angel Nafis. They're two incredible poets who happen to be partners, and they're married, but I've taken classes with them individually and also together. And they're both poets, but they do other kinds of writing as well. And they have such a unique way of integrating like the beloved and the divine, and speaking about grief and queerness and love. And I think it's because they're so embodied in their day-to-day life was what makes them such incredible teachers. and they both have also gone through, you know, experiences in life that will shape you and change you, and they've written about that. So, and other poets that I look to for inspiration, and whose work I also just really enjoy, thinking about Ross Gay, I'm thinking about Lucille Clifton, I'm thinking about some trans poets that I love, Kay Ivor and Gabrielle Cavalcaresi. Their work, I think I'm attracted to work that explores grief and joy as like a continuum on the same axis, and I just can't get enough of that.
Awesome.
And I guess from like a childhood standpoint, who like really ignited my desire to write, this is like kind of embarrassing, but also like just gonna own it. Harriet the Spy.
Oh my god, no, not embarrassing.
Did you ever watch that movie?
Great.
It was a Nickelodeon original movie, so the VHS was orange, and she was, I guess at the core, like an observer, right? Like she wrote down everything that she saw, very, very journalism-esque, and had these, you know, filled these notebooks with things that she saw and had a knack for seeing things that like maybe she shouldn't see. And eventually her journals got found out, and it was very embarrassing, and like also sort of, I don't want to say like ruining, but like, you know, when you're like 12, it feels like your life is ruined when somebody is reading your journal. And so that is what I think ignited, oddly enough, like a practice of noticing and observing. And to me, that's like what poetry is. It's just like, it's just noticing things in life. Like whether you write it down or not is like whatever. But if you're taking a moment, taking a beat, and just noticing the way the air feels, or noticing how the light looks like, or how somebody's eyes are, you know?
It's so interesting because also Harriet the Spy took out this idea of like a diary being this like just like only a space to explore your emotions, and instead turned it around to be like, no, I'm noticing and putting things together and being aware, and it's I'm fully present within this space. It's not me, which like also write your emotions, but like Harriet the Spy gave this like this like cool journalistic approach to journal entry.
We should watch it.
It's
together.
I want to watch it.
Also, ghostwriter.
I wonder if it holds.
Right?
I feel like it would. Those movies always like kind of slap.
I mean, Nickelodeon was really a big deal.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Michelle
Ghostwriter
Trachtenberg.
though? Did you?
It was Michelle Trachtenberg who
way.
was Harriet the Spy.
Did you read the book Harriet the Spy?
No.
Oh my god, I have like an old vintage copy.
Delightful.
We should do a reading.
Oh my god, yes.
But on PBS, they had Ghostwriter, which was a big deal. And that was like my inspiration. I don't remember the full plot. I just remember my siblings being really annoyed when I would put it on. And I was like, please, let me read it. And it was about, you know, like, I think I was like little. But it was such an inspiration for me to be like this. It was like, I'm pretty sure Ghost was like giving them clues by writing this thing, or they just didn't know who was writing it.
Wow.
Something, but there was like getting clues, and these kids were like solving these things. But the same idea, it made me like, writing seemed cool. And it took, I think poetry can hold a pretentious air to it that can seem unapproachable. And it took that out of it. And instead it made it like interesting and cool, and that anybody should and can, that anybody's perspective is valid and worthy of a story, and anyone's voice is worthy of being heard. And it made me want to listen and write.
Awesome. I love all these recommendations. So now we're kind of gonna track, how we started with the beginning, right? And now we're gonna move on to like how you got to where you guys are today. However that may look or sound. So Linden, how would you track the development of your poetry, and how do you see yourself as a poet today?
Thank you for the question. I guess I'll start, because there already is a little bit of context. I'll answer by starting, I'm sure I'll like have some kind of circuitous rhythm to this answer, but I started writing poetry. I started taking writing poetry more seriously in 2020. My therapist at the time had recommended I take this workshop, and I was very sick. I had been sick since 2018, and then things had gotten worse in 2019, and I had my own sort of I was isolated and alone even before the COVID-19 pandemic began. And so was like really used to, or like getting used to, finding community online and like strengthening connections there and seeking community there. And my therapist was like, Shira Ehrlichman's a great teacher. I heard her reading a poem on Instagram. You should take her workshop. And I thought it was like creative nonfiction writing, which is like would have been more my comfort zone. Coming from journalism and coming from like being on staff. I was on staff at a publication at the time. I was like, okay, cool, I'll take this. So I signed up. And on day one, I realized it was not creative nonfiction writing. It was indeed a poetry workshop. And I was like, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into? And I stayed. I stayed because the space that Shira created, not only did she do an incredible job of creating intimacy through the screen that felt and was genuine and real, but also that community was so nurturing of even like the idea of a seed. Like, she didn't care that I had no background in poetry. Nobody there cared. They were just interested in what came out. And like what happens when you come to the page and what happens when you play. And so for me, writing poetry became a way of sort of like, became a way of exploring my relationship with uncertainty and with the unknown and with the great mystery. Especially because at the time I was up against my own mortality. I was in and out of the hospital. I was really not sure like what was going to happen. And then, 2020, everybody here lived through that, and there was even more uncertainty. And so what to do with that? And I came to the page, and it was a place to express and to play and to just let happen whatever did happen. It was a way to be present. And I remember talking to Shira and saying, I can't do this. Like, I can't write a poem. Like, nothing's coming out. I can write a line here or there, or like I can think of a phrase that I like, or I can think of a resonant image, but like I've got nothing when it comes to actually writing a poem down. And I thought, like, naively, you just downloaded a poem and like there it is. And sometimes it happens like that. But for me, most of the time, my process is very like staccato. And so was chatting with her about that. She was like, then let it be that. Like, if that's what you're working with, then that's what you're working with. And the way that it was the greatest gift, the way that she taught me how to honor where I was at you know, because I was also under anesthesia a lot. I was on a lot of different medication. Like, I couldn't really process language in the way that I was used to processing it. And so in this moment, I came to poetry sort of inventing like new ways to say things, inventing a new language for myself. And it was kind of an act of recovery, but recovery of a new self, recovery of what was happening in the here and now, and also like exploring new ideas and exploring who I was becoming. And so it has evolved from there into a practice of always of listening. I mean, I think as a poet, you know, my first task is always to listen and to notice and to pay attention. And I go long stretches without writing anything. And I think that that's okay. I listened to an interview recently with Ocean Vuong, who said that he doesn't believe in writer's block because the idea of writer's block kind of holds against it that you're like supposed to be writing or you're supposed to be productive. And that's under capitalism. Capitalism wants us to go, 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 go. Yeah. And what happens when that expectation isn't there, then there's no such thing as writer's block. And that just like unraveled me in the best way. I was like, wow, more people should know this.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad I'm hearing this now too.
Oh, it's just like full permission to just live and let living be the writing or let living be the poem sometimes. It's hard to do that because I think when you define yourself as a writer or your job is to be a journalist or as a poet, you know, there's an expectation that you'll be producing something. And that's real. And also if it's something that's, you know, living inside of your creative practice and the relationship is like you and you or you and the unknown, I think all we can do is show up and just see what happens. So I don't know. I think I really went on a tangent. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that's okay. I mean, they're kind of more like guidelines, but I love tangents.
And that is like, what's the journey? And you're like, here's the journey.
Here we go.
Here it is. Come with me.
That is the journey. So, Becky, how would you answer that question?
The question was, what's the journey of...
how could you track the development of your poetry over time, and how do you see yourself as a poet today?
Right. So I went to a writing school that was like a wild choice. There was a lot of that like pretentiousness that I was talking about that was difficult to access, though I met so many people that I really connected to. But yeah, my journey, I guess, was when I went there, I went in with so many words and so many ideas and so much self-doubt, so much understanding of anything. Not of anything, but of a lot. And I lost a lot of people in 1 year. I lost, it was like 9 people in my like family, but then also like extended family and friends. It was all in a very compact time. And when my grandmother was in the hospital, I would fly back and forth from Colorado to home quite a bit. And every time I flew back, it was like, we're going to lose her. So I would go home for the weekend and then go back for school and then go home for the weekend again. And it was just, my writing became from such a different place. Instead of trying to like communicate this like worldly idea, I wrote a list of the things I needed to pack for possibly a funeral, but pack really light because I'm going to be there for 2 days. But also I can't forget things like cigarettes, you know, like and it just became these like skeletons that were so much more communicative than all of these fucking words I had before. And I realized that I didn't need to try to become what I had been reading, and instead just use only the words that connected and resonated with me. And sometimes that meant writing a lot of words and then taking out 90% of them. And sometimes it meant writing a lot of words and finding one sentence and only keeping that sentence. And now it's gotten much easier for me to just only use the few words. But then that was a big thing of like finding my voice and how I communicate. And then I was in a long relationship for almost 17 years that I couldn't figure out why I didn't feel like I was aligned in that time. And I kept thinking something was going on with me. So writing became a space for me to process and try to figure things out. So it was a lot of like venting poems or like writing to like suss things out poems, and poems became like a way that I was like, wait, I'm tapped into myself though. What's this all about? And I didn't know it was something within the relationship. I was just like living my life. I was like, how the fuck did I become like a housewife in the suburbs? Like this feels not the trajectory I was on. And I kept trying to figure out what was going on. And then I found out that what was going on, and it had nothing to do with me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to let that relationship go because that had nothing to do with me. And then I came into the awareness that I was queer, but I'm like mid-30s at this point. And I mean, it tracked. Like when you say we always looking back at your childhood, like, my God, I was literally throwing queer events at my family's farm because I wanted to create a safe space because I was a really good ally. Like I was like, it was there. But my writing then, from understanding my queerness and going through all of this, processing and working and fleshing things out and doing this, and then being like, bitch, you were okay. And then having a safe space to kind of naturally fall into alignment with myself. Poetry became like the most pure form of celebration to just be able to like share that authenticity and that the craziness of that journey. But in a really celebratory way. And then, like I said, was telling you guys before about reading poems to my kids and having them tell their friends and tell people whenever they learn about poetry at school, they like get all excited and they're like, my mom's a poet actually. And I'm like, that's huge. So yeah, the journey was about just like finding how to find my words and then finding myself through my words and then finding myself and using my words to communicate that. It does feel like we go on a tangent. It does feel long.
It's a big question. It's a really big question. And yeah, I mean, the more time that development has had to accrue, the more history there is to track. So, you know, I'm here for it.
It's big, yeah.
It's big, yeah, it's big, but it's, you know, it's great and it's super important. So now let's pivot from all that stuff. Since you guys are a part of the Queer Poetry Showcase next week, I want to talk about, you know, queerness and pride a little bit, because you guys seem like professionals, and you know, you can you can educate us, to those watching who may be uneducated.
Wait, what are we educating on? Queerness?
I don't know. Well, let me just ask. Let me just ask these questions, because now I'm just rambling. So Becky, what does pride and queerness mean to you? Or being queer?
So for me, like I said, it was pretty recent for me to understand that space within myself. It feels like such a relief to know, like, it's like I'm like honored to be queer. The family I have found, not only within my literal community, but also the looking up like archives and hearing stories of people that have just really fought for their authenticity and throughout history and for love and for their community.
Yeah.
And to hear these stories and finally like feel the resonance within my DNA. I'm like, this is my fucking family tree. This is it. And it's so, yeah, it's really very emotional and moving to be connected to such a really gorgeous, powerful group of humans that are constantly working so hard for everyone. Even if they're just working hard for themselves, by doing that is working hard for everyone. And it is, yeah, it's a really huge thing. I love that it's called Pride, because I'm super overwhelmingly proud.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I answered the question.
Thank you.
I got lost.
No, all good. And Linden, what does pride and being queer mean to you?
Thank you for asking. You're talking to two late bloomers here. I came out in 2020 publicly, and then a year later came out as non-binary, trans non-binary, and since then it has been just like an onion, you know, sort of unpeeling layer after layer, because when, at least my experience coming out later in life, there's so much conditioning that needs to be unlearned and unspooled and unraveled, and so much of life has already been lived that sometimes needs to be undone, and sometimes needs to change in order to align with your values. And you know, for me, queerness is, of course, you know, my gender, sexuality, orientation, all of that. And also, like, in a bell hooks way, it's a politic. Queerness is a politic, you know? So, echoing what Becky was saying, like, queerness is, I think bell hooks, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's about standing against the odds. And so for me, queer as in land back, queer as in free Palestine, queer as in disability justice, queer as in trans rights. Just today, you know, the Supreme Court upheld a decision for states to ban gender affirming care for kids. And it is devastating, the attacks that are happening on our community.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just lost my train of thought thinking about that. But I think, at least in our community, and, you know, we all kind of, I think, are in a similar Hudson Valley queer community. Everyone's fighting for each other and, like, fighting for our sweetnesses and our tendernesses and our joys, like our daily joys of having coffee with your partner or your lover.
Yeah.
And then wondering, like, who the fuck wants to make this illegal? You know? I think living close to the idea that, you know, like, the idea of just the privileges that we have, using those to speak and fight and donate and
Yeah.
And, you know, pride is a celebration. And I think that staying in our joy as much as we possibly can is so important. Wherever we can get it, you know?
It's such a form of activism.
Absolutely.
It's such a,
Our joy is a form of protest.
Yeah. And I'm so glad to have you guys here, and so excited to hear you guys on Monday as well. The fact that I can even create a space for people to explore that and to present themselves in a way that's not only authentic but safe means so much to me. And, you know, I thank David for, you know, helping me manifest this as well. It really is such a privilege to even have something like this, but, you know, the fact that we record these and put them out there, I think it shows people that it's possible, even in places where it's so few and far between. So I'm so glad that there are people like you in this world. I think it just gives me hope to hear, you know, your stories and, you know, how even though you were, as you said, late bloomers, you persevered and you've made it, and, you know, you guys come off as such strong and confident people to me. And,
your face.
you know, just in my opinion, but, yeah, it's so great to hear your stories, and thank you so much for being open and sharing. It really means a lot.
Thanks so much for giving us the space.
Of course.
It's really huge. We did not know that we were going to be performing together or on the podcast together, and we got really excited. That was a big deal. But yeah, it's huge. I mean, just creating spaces that are safe is so huge and so valuable. And then creating spaces where people get to share their words. You never have any idea what words are going to resonate or hit people or change something in somebody or connect in some way. And giving people space to both share and receive that is really powerful.
Yeah.
So it's so appreciated that you guys are doing this.
Absolutely. The work you're doing is so important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks.
I do it for you guys, not for me. I mean, I do it kind of for me, like selfishly a little bit, I guess. But
Yeah, you want to hear all the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, that's my face, whatever. What about it? But yeah, Monday's gonna be awesome. I like truly can't wait. But I do have a few more questions before that.
Absolutely.
I'm like thinking now. I feel like you guys have answered like some of my questions, which is like kind of crazy. I thought I was being like really intentional with all these, but that's great. Becky, in what ways would you say your art and poetry deals with the theme of queerness?
So I just submitted a manuscript.
Congrats.
Which feels crazy. And it came together quicker than I thought. But that I right now I write pretty frequently. That was not always the case in my life. I am very much in agreement of just like allowing writing to happen when it does. And the whole arc of my manuscript is like looking for like queer guidance, and then poetry kind of becoming my queer mother, in that it's one of the first ways that I felt othered, and one of the first connections to feeling confident in my being othered, in being like, it's okay if I can't find someone that connects to this. It's mine, and I still want it. So I'll find those people. And I think that shift in me of being like a little kid and not finding the community and saying, oh, that's okay, I'll keep looking, instead of being like, there must be something wrong with me. That first perspective shift was such a small door that just through life of accessing that feeling over and over again made a space big enough for me to come to the awareness of my queerness. So yeah, poetry was like my guide, and queerness is inherent in everything I do.
Yeah.
It is in how I cook, it is in how I move my hands, it is in how I dress my body, it is in how I protest, it is in how I parent. It can't help but be just woven within everything. But yeah, poetry has become a space for me to really celebrate that and showcase that. Yeah, and connect with people of that confusion, of that search for, like, am I gay? Wait a second, what does this mean? And then also finding the beauty in that, and how much of a different, and like how powerful it is to like write a love poem to my girlfriend. And I have a poem, I'll probably read it on Monday, about like the idea of young queers reading this poem to their girlfriend that I wrote about my girlfriend.
Wow.
And like not having to change the pronouns of things to fit in, but be like, no, it just fits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is like such a, like we were saying, like that joy is a protest. And writing love poems without them being considered like to my best friend is pretty, it's pretty stunning.
Yeah. Thank you. And Linden, in what ways does your art or poetry deal with the theme of queerness?
I think my entire existence, like Becky was saying, is shaped by my queerness, but also particularly art space and poetry space has been shaped by queer people who hold queer values. And my art practice is, I am like nothing without my community. I like to write in groups. I like to write with accountability buddies. I like to write in workshops that center queer people, queer art, queer values. And have found that I often won't do the like solitary writer thing, you know? Like, I mean, I do morning pages and things like that, and sometimes poems come of that. But it's so often, I mean, it is always to me is co-created.
Yeah.
And there's something very gay about that.
Yeah.
There's something very queer about in like these encounters, and about collaboration, and about surrendering, I suppose. So I think my practice in and of itself is very informed by queerness and collaboration. And like the subject matter itself, I write a lot about living in a chronically ill body, and I write a lot about grief, and I write a lot about breaking up with, also strangely, a partner of 17 years.
Oh my God.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
And the unraveling of self that I think that queerness was asking of me. And, you know, the queer poets that I love and look to, and even from, you know, just not even just a writing perspective, but the way that they live their life, like queerness is kind of like taking something and like turning it and being like, what about this? What about this way? Looking at it this way, looking at it this way, like flipping the thing that you're talking about over and over and over again until you understand it from every angle. And also leaving room for more questions. And I think that takes a lot of courage. It's easy to not do that. It's easy to not self-inquire. It's easy to not self-reflect in this world that demands so much from us all of the time. You know, whether you have responsibilities to children, whether you have responsibilities to your job, to family members and caretaking, like it is just so easy to not look at this stuff. And my friend Jordan, when I was asking her about a phrase that she wanted to keep close for the year ahead, she said, keep looking. And I think about that a lot in relationship to queerness, because I think it is a practice of looking. And it's a practice of seeing, but it's a practice of continuing to look and ask and like taking the risk of being vulnerable and taking the risk of what happens when I write these words on the page that I'm currently so ashamed of. Like, you know, what happens? And like when I am in the process of writing a poem, I tell myself like this never has to see the light of day. Like this is, you know, just between me and you, Google. And sometimes they do, you know, sometimes they do see the light of day. And I think that, where was I going with this tangent? Where was I going?
Keep looking.
Yeah. And also like how is your practice queer, or like how is your writing queer? I think for me, a lot of it is the process, but also like, yeah, when you're writing the body, when you're writing grief, when you're asking these big questions that lead to an unraveling. That's where I was going. Yeah. The unraveling. Very gay.
Yeah. Totally. I love your perspectives. It's so interesting to think of it as like this, maybe not malleable, but this shape that you can mold. I really like that analogy. I think that's so interesting because it brings it out of the identity of queerness itself, and it's more of like, it is like within you, and like whether you want to say that's like, you know, your brain or your organs pushing this out of you, it's like it is so much more physical, I think, than we realize sometimes. And when I say we, I'm like speaking for you. But yeah, that I really liked both of your perspectives on it, and how different they were.
I will also add, it is so fun to write queer love poems.
Oh my God.
And the only time I've ever been able to write love poems is either for my queer friends or my queer relationship. And it's wild to be able to access that because for so long I was writing like grief and the body and the unraveling. And now it's not only that, it's like also love and also joy. And like, I think now more than any other time is like the time to write love poems that are like too earnest.
Yeah.
You know, like we could all use a little bit of like pep in our step.
Yeah.
A little bit more love, a little bit more earnestness. You've heard me read them before, and it's like, it's always a little embarrassing because you're like, oh, well, this was about my crush when I wrote it, and like, okay, here we are. And it's just...
No, that's the best.
Yeah.
I used to believe that I would tell people, like, I don't really write happy poems. I don't really write from a happy
It's relatable.
place.
That's so relatable.
I was like, no, I can really access sadness. And then I came out, and then I was just like, oh my God, flowers though? Did you see that? Like, did you see how stunning that was? Yeah. And just everything, because when you are within your focus, everything is clearer, and it's just like, it really is like, it's like when people put on glasses for the first time and they're like, holy shit, have you guys seen trees? It's like that, but coming into myself has made everything so stunning, and I want to talk about it all the time. Yeah, I want to be like,
I want to hear you talk about
gorgeous.
It all the time.
It's beautiful. Like, did you guys know that like love is stunning, and peaches are stunning, and like the smell of the earth is stunning, and just I want to talk about it.
Yeah, it infects our lives, it seems, and I think that's just being loved in a way that we feel is so real. Whatever that looks like for you.
And loving ourselves in that way too. Being able to like really understand myself in that way to finally love her and then be like, okay, now I'm going to find a partner that loves me to the same capacity I love me, because that's how you find partners. That's where your standard is. Like,
absolutely.
And I couldn't love myself as much before because I just didn't know this about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I was getting partners that only could love part of me. That's all I was showing them. That's all I loved. That's all I knew to present.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had this like little door inside of me that was actually like a whole fucking secret garden. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
But yeah, like then all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, look how gorgeous this is, this space. And since I love myself more, I can expect and accept more love.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then write about it. I just saw myself. It's wild.
It's always like kind of jarring. So super quickly, I always like to throw something like this in the podcast in some capacity, but could you guys, I forget which person we left off on. I think it was you, right? Okay, I'm pretty sure it was Linden.
I think so. I just started talking.
Could you shout out a few or your favorite local queer spaces and let us know why they're so amazing?
Oh my God. Totally. I love, I met most of my current friends and community at, I'm going to call it See You Next Tuesday, Cunt, run by Jess Edelman. My partner Colton Thorne hosts open mics, and they are incredible. Oh my God, there's so many spaces. I'm going to also shout out my friend Bridget Bador's old shop that is currently closed, but will open again in some iteration. Is always like, you know, something is brewing, called Holding Space. Really, really special and beautiful. Showcasing of queer artists from all over the place, but a lot of local artists as well.
Yeah.
Little Loaf, run by Ryan and Colleen and New Paltz. It's a really sweet space. I'm gonna stop so you have some.
I know, I'm like, it's hard because we also are like go to the
overlap.
same spaces.
Yes.
Hence us knowing each other. But yeah, follow Queer Kingston. That is such a great resource. That's how I found out everything before I even knew Jess. I was like, oh my God, let's go to Cunt. What a big deal.
Let's go.
And
yeah.
that was like my first place to go. I was like just 1 foot out of the closet.
Me
I was
too.
like, I'm gonna go to this thing and blah 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 blah. And it was huge, and I met such a great community of people. Yeah, Harana Market is a big deal. Such great food. I don't know. There's so many places.
Unicorn Bar.
Unicorn, of course.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah, there's. It's hard to be put on the spot and think things. There is, what is that? Julie's Girls Club. That's a cute situation. That's like a online meet.
Yeah, that's down in Beacon, I think.
Yeah, she does a lot of events all around. I'm trying to think. Big Gay Hudson Valley. I've worked with them for a long time back when I was straight running a road stand. I did a bunch of gay events at the farm with them. They're great. They do discos once a month in the summer at Bad Seed Cidery, which is my brother's cidery.
Awesome.
So it works out great for me. I get to go to a gay disco and
hell yeah,
can just like walk home. So stunning, lovely.
Lovely.
But yeah, I think Queer Kingston is a great situation, and See You Next Tuesday. Cunt, as they call it. But yeah, it's every Tuesday.
At Saltbox.
At Saltbox. Camp Kingston.
Oh, Camp Kingston. How could we forget?
That's a big one.
Yeah. It's hard to name specifically queer establishments when sometimes so many people will be going to an establishment that's like not, you know, so many of the queer community will just be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's why,
like, I'm thinking about Assembly. I don't think it's explicitly queer, but there are a lot of explicitly queer events that happen there.
Yeah.
I think that's why See You Next Tuesday was such a great spot, because it wasn't necessarily like, here's a big event, here's a cover charge, here's whatever. I went many times just by myself to meet a whole group of new people. And I'm extroverted, but Jesus Christ, that was a lot. And I would just sit there and just like hang out with the bartender. And she was great. It was wonderful. But also the community is so genuine that you start one conversation with one person and really quickly you get to know everybody, and somebody will connect and be like, oh my God, you like this? You guys should talk. And just, really quickly it becomes really beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's a great place to make friends and meet a community, not just go to an event and like have a cool place to go. It's a great spot to start to build a foundation of a community. So that's pretty rare and huge.
Yeah, and I think that the way Jess does it, each food vendor who comes is like also queer owned or queer run. And so there's like often a different group of people showing up to each thing. And
in the summers, it's really nice because there's just so much outdoor space. You know, there's a nice spot there.
This is an advertisement for Queer Kingston.
Yeah, we love. Good work, Jess.
Yes.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Jess. Also, Lagusta's is a good spot.
Oh my God, best chocolate ever.
They have great chocolate there. I'm trying to think of more.
And there's so...
I'm sure I'll think of like 5 as soon as we walk off.
Yeah, well, you can mention them on Monday too.
Great.
Yeah, there's time for that.
Oh, Ollie's Pizza is pretty gay, I gotta say.
Also gay.
Yeah, they're super gay.
Ollie's is good too.
Yeah.
They have a good slice.
They've got a good outdoor, in the one in, what is that, Stone Ridge or High Falls?
High Falls.
yeah.
It's a
It's a
great
huge
like outdoor space and lots of, I don't actually know who owns it.
And the
but
bookstore
they're a gay
right
crew.
across the street,
Blue
Blue
Heron.
Heron, is owned by a queer couple. Oh my God.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
really
great.
cool.
Good to know.
Yeah. There you go.
What are your favorite queer spots?
We'll call it Quaverin now.
Quaverin.
I'm getting asked a question. Oh my God. I would say I'm a bit biased towards some in the area because I wrote about a lot of them when they opened. So Unicorn Bar, I covered them like several times. I covered Francesca's album drop. I like reviewed it. So definitely have so much respect for everything they've done and, you know, revitalized that whole space there, which was, you know, Beverly Lounge was so iconic, and it is just, let's be honest, like more iconic now, and just like so happy that that space has transformed in the way that it has. Also Camp Kingston, I wrote about them when they opened. Holding Space, I wrote about them when they opened. I've wrote, oh my God, I'm trying to think now. Oh, Fancy Bagels.
Oh yeah. I haven't been yet.
I don't know anything
Oh
about this.
my God. I did not write about them when they opened, but I desperately wanted to, because I was like kind of stalking them for a while, because I love my carbs, and
I know, I was like, I'm sorry.
Same.
What?
oh my God,
I'm
it's
real into
so
bagels.
good.
I mean,
It's like
food.
they have like really good bagels. They're like sourdough bagels, I think,
Oh my God.
and they're so good. I was just dreaming about them for so long, and it really lived up to my expectations.
I love this.
Yeah. I can't think of, I mean, Blue Heron is great. I'm a big book snob, so I'll say that. And the bookstore in Cold Spring, Split Rock, they're super queer friendly, and they run a lot of queer events there. I love them. And can't think of like anything else off the top of my head, but
Chicory naturalist.
yes, chicory.
I would be remiss not to mention chicory. I feel like we talked a lot about mushrooms in the beginning, and like I learned most of what I know about mushrooms from Chris Baker, who owns that store.
Wow.
And there's a lot of it's like a highly curated book selection that Chris does an incredible job of, and there's lots of queer authors, local authors. It's a great space.
Yeah,
Love it there.
That's great.
they are very cool.
Nature is gay.
Yeah, nature is so gay.
Oh my god, everywhere shop.
Everywhere shop.
Oh,
Of
my
course.
god,
What are
wait,
we
yes, I
doing?
also wrote about them
Oh
when
my
they
god.
opened.
Everywhere shop.
It's Gay Endurance Month. They have like new merch that says Gay Endurance Month, and I'm
Oh my
like,
god. Amazing.
yes,
Yeah.
it is.
That's
Wow, I'm so
outstanding.
glad we mentioned that one because that kind of would have been a little embarrassing if we forgot that.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
really hard because also it's become less, these are queer spaces,
Yeah.
and it's just become, these are my spaces.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like, it's just my community. Like
Mhm.
It's so fluid.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's just, these are the spaces that are just become part of my normal.
Yeah.
So like if I have a thing to go to or like a birthday party or whatever, I'm like, oh shit, okay, I got to put on my rotation to like
Mhm.
make sure I go to everywhere shop. It's just like where you get the gifts and the things
Yeah.
for that. And
The cards.
yeah, all the cards, all the cute, both of my kids really like art. So it's a great spot for getting them little things to draw on. And and my oldest is non-binary, so getting them cute merch and things that just
They have really cute
they're
merch
little
there.
pins and little
Yeah.
patches and all sorts of things.
Mhm.
But yeah, all these places have just become regular spots for me.
Yeah.
Lagast is like, I always want a coffee
Oh my
before
God,
I
are you
walk on the
kidding
rail
me?
trail.
I can't even talk about that place because I get like hangry.
A friend of ours, Maeve, it was a while ago, but I said something about I was like, what drink did I get? And she had memorized. She's like, I've been there like 4 times this week. I was like, God damn.
It
She
has
just
an
knew the
effect.
specials list. She was like, oh, did you get this one or this one? I was like, I mean, good job, but
Mhm.
wow.
Very impressive.
It's great.
Not
Great work.
Kingstonians traveling to New Paltz for a cup of coffee.
We have a problem.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm in Highland, so,
That's true.
and yeah.
That's true.
The person Maeve is dating is also in New Paltz, so she was there for that.
I see.
But also, we totally travel.
They
I've
got
traveled
they
from
got great
Cold
coffee
Spring
there.
Yeah.
to Augusta, so
And we love
we're
it.
in the same boat.
I will also say Little Loaf.
Ooh,
Excellent
I
coffee.
haven't been
Excellent.
there
And
yet.
also the
I know.
pastries.
I know.
You would never know.
On
Like,
Sunday, they're doing a Pride thing.
yes.
A little Pride picnic. I'm reading, actually, a children's book
Oh my
I wrote
God.
in college that
Wow.
I edited. So I'm going to do a little kids reading.
Wow. Back
So
to back.
that was a big
readings.
deal. Yeah. Talk about endurance month. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah, seriously.
So much. But yeah, Little
Yeah.
Loaf's good at there's everything. Like their
everything,
coffee,
the space, the
the
coffee,
food, obviously the fucking pastries are
the
out
pastries
of control.
I mean, the food,
Yeah.
the lunch is incredible. I would write a letter of recommendation for the pretzel croissant.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
that stuff
You're
is bananas.
I honestly,
Oh my
It's a
It-
lifestyle.
it
You should get one.
it
Yeah,
is
If you've ever had one at Lagusta's,
No.
it's the same bakery they get theirs from.
it is
Little
outstanding.
Out of this
Everything.
world, get a pretzel croissant.
Get everything.
I want one.
I got a strawberry
Gay.
shortcake Danish. The other day, my oldest skipped school because it was their birthday, and I was like, "Baby, let's get breakfast." And we went there, and I just honestly used their birthday as an excuse for me to get pastries. Like I for sure
Yeah.
was like, "You're welcome," but I wanted it, so it's.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta go there. People have been telling me, and I'm like, just
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. It's always tomorrow. But yeah, that's all the time we have. Not like we've been timed or anything, but this has
Don't
been
get us
so
started
wonderful.
on pastries.
I
Unless
know,
you guys have any final thoughts about food or being gay.
Don't ask that. Of course we have fun. That's
Yeah, we have.
yeah.
We could
Yeah,
say more.
well, maybe we
Food
should
and
do this
being
again,
gay.
but just make it way more specific, you know?
Yeah. It's like food.
Yeah, food.
Queer
period.
food.
Queer food,
Yeah.
period. Yeah, well, thank you guys so much, Becky and Linden. This has been so wonderful. Can't wait to see you guys on Monday perform. I'm like, the anticipation is truly going to kill me. So if I don't make it, you'll know why.
There's the anticipation.
Oh, it's Gay Endurance Month.
Yes, exactly. No, I'll be fine. But yeah, thank you guys for coming, for sharing, being so open in this space. And we will see you on Monday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. at 229 Greenkill Avenue in Kingston, New York. White Noise signing off.